Handball is a sport that, despite its exciting end-to-end action, has not been able to reach the same levels of popularity in the UK that it has reached in Europe. This is something that many international players playing in England are aware of when discussing the challenges of the growth of the sport in this country.
It's very, very different. Yeah, in France, I think it's the second or third most popular sport in terms of team sports. So everyone knows about handball. Most like small villages will have handball clubs. Everyone will have, handball courts to play on. It'll be taught at school and things like that. And coming into the UK, you tell someone you play handball, and most of them kind of go like, "Oh, is it like basketball?" Or so a lot of people don't know what handball is, which is really, yeah, kind of off-putting.
It's a challenge, right, to grow a smaller sport in a country where all the attention goes to other sport, and there's not necessarily an infrastructure.
The England Handball Final Four is the highest level of the sport in this country. It was a great opportunity to sit down with some of the players and talk about what they think will help the sport develop further in England. The lack of popularity or even knowledge about the sport leads to one of the biggest obstacles when growing handball domestically: the lack of proper facilities.
Think the one thing that hinders the handball here the most, I've already touched on that, is the lack of availability in terms of venues. It was a bit of a shock to me when I learned that sports halls and sport courts in this country are not just built by default to handball field size, because I've never seen that before. I always learned that a normal sports hall you build is the size of a handball field, and here it's not. And that makes the development quite difficult. And to some extent, of course, it's also a bit telling that basically all the top teams, at least in the south, and I think in the north of England as well, are made out of people that moved to England from abroad that played handball before.
And then there's everything that goes with, infrastructure, teams and things like that. All the teams pretty much are from London. And there's really not that many places to actually play. We're from Oxford, we can't play in Oxford. So we've played in Aylesbury, we've played in Northampton. It's really weird, playing a handball home game but having to drive an hour and a half. Yeah, it's hopefully it develops more in the UK very soon.
However, addressing this lack of courts to play on is tough due to the lack of funding given to a smaller sport in this country.
It's a big issue. I mean, I get it. It's not a big sport in this country, so the funding and the facilities won't be the best either. But obviously, coming from a luxurious place in Germany where we know how to play handball is a big shock when I came here. Like, we played in a school sports hall when it was COVID or 2021, and it was concrete floor. It was horrendous. So yeah, I think get the facilities, get this kind of floor here. Wooden floors are definitely better than concrete in terms of safety as well. Find a better solution of how to play with tack and how to clean the courts, keep the courts clean. There are solutions. It's just how much effort you want to put into those solutions.
Handball in this country is not particularly well funded, and organizing such funds in such short term is, as I said, is a challenge. And I think we did the same as a lots of other teams, launching a GoFundMe and reaching out to friends, family, people we know from our personal networks, basically, to support us on that trip, which worked out remarkably well. And I think we owe a huge thank you to all of those people.
With all of these issues then, what is the best way to grow handball in England in the immediate future? Improved funding and facilities will take time and won't impact development immediately. The players from the Final Four all agreed on where the immediate focus should be.
Schools, really. My Stroud handball coach was Matt Derber, who is very much, he started by implementing it in schools. And as a whole, England, we are 10, 15 years behind other countries. And there isn't so much of a change that you can make now in the teams to then get the performance in the next 3, 4, 5 years. It's the schools, and it's your players that you're bringing up from 8 to 10. They're the players that will ultimately make the biggest change to handball in England.
I think it's number one, opportunity. I know I only started playing handball. It wasn't in school the first time I played handball. It was with Hackney for the London Youth Games and like training for that. And that opportunity, I think, isn't something which was readily given to a lot of people. Obviously, now with kind of changes in the PE curriculum in schools, handball now is one of those sports that were kept on compared to something like, I know, rounders was on there and like orienteering, that sports like that kind of got removed. So a lot of schools had to start implementing handball teachings in their schools more. And I think the way to obviously grow handball now in this country is really just by outreach.
And whilst there is still more to do, the players recognise the efforts and improvements England handball have made in this area in recent years.
What I notice now in the recent periods when that the federation is kind of trying to emphasize and build out its network in schools, etc., and start popularizing the sport with younger kids, while at the same time, if I understand it correctly from talking with some of my teammates and former teammates, that they very much stimulate the British seniors who have the ambition to play for the national team and to represent Great Britain, to very much stimulate them to go to competitions abroad, to try to get into the professional competitions in mainland Europe and bring back that experience to the national team.
You have really to give it to the EHA that they try to close the gap and they try to come up with systems and settings that make it possible to develop the handball here. And I think for the national teams, they do, from what I've seen, as someone that is not an expert coach or like experience in like developing handball as something, it seems they do a quite decent job. And they now also have the requirement that you have a junior team as a handball club that plays Premier League.
Immediate change is difficult, but these continued grassroots efforts will be what make the difference in the long term for both future and current players. It is important for ensuring the longevity of the sport in this country, something the players seemed very aware of.
I think the more people play it, the more the infrastructure and everything will come with it. So, as long as you get people interested, you get young kids playing, maybe you get the UK at a better stage on the international stage, people that would follow the UK would see handball and kind of hope that, this is a sport that I didn't really know about and it looks fun. Why don't I do it?
Long term, the longevity of handball is it needs to become a widely played sport in school. It's a co-sex sport. It can be played both for your girls and your boys in school, which not any other sport is. And also it's a super cost efficient. You've got hockey being played and it's as cheap as netball. You've got a goal and a ball, and it's pretty much that throw and catch and shoot into a goal.
And with domestic growth of the sport will come more and more opportunities for players in Europe.
when you're a youth player going abroad to a handballing nation is to see the pure size of the sport, of the game in those regions, but then also the passion that people have, and being able to see that, wow, handball is actually a bigger sport than what I see here in the UK, and that kind of exposure, and it kind of puts opportunity on a pedestal there, because you really then want to go and chase those feelings more, playing in front of crowds, playing in big handball stadiums, playing abroad as well, with your team, with your national team country.
These players developing at a higher level will lead to an interesting development that Ben Luyton of London GD pointed out.
So for a lot of children to want to play handball, like what helps is to see big stars, right? For them to have examples, guys in the national team they look up to that are like world-class players. But to have those world-class players in the first place, you need to start from a solid foundation in terms of youth.
But with all of these changes for the future, it's important to not overlook the improvements that have been made in the level of competition in the English leagues in the past few years.
We had quite few games which were like comfortable wins. We beat Carshalton, who in the end I think got 5th in the away game by 1 goal. I think we only had 2 or 3 games during the season where we really comfortably won the games. So I would say the league was really competitive in a very good sense, which also gave us the opportunity to play a lot of close games and interesting games, I think, as well to watch.
England handball's efforts have increased the popularity of the sport in the country, which will help foster more growth.
It's going the right way, it seems. They're doing great things from what I see on Instagrams and things like that. So hopefully that gets people to want to play handball, and subsequently, infrastructure getting better and everything going with it.